welcome to Daddy Life London. Sorry, it's been a long time since I've done one of these, but there's been loads of crazy stuff going on over the last month or two, so just really haven't had the time or headspace to kind of think about what I wanted to say. But I have been asked a lot recently about birth names of your adopted children, and what would you keep them? Do you change them? What the personal preference is. A lot of people would like, obviously, to give a name themselves, and I've been asked kind of my own opinion. I'd like to be really clear, this is my personal opinion, and everyone does things differently. Every situation is different, every child is different, every risks or the safety of and the welfare of that child is different, so there's going to be lots of reasons why you should or shouldn't, and it all comes down to the individual circumstance, I think. So for me, changing the name was something that, although I fantasized about, and it'd be nice to, if you had your own birth child, to give them your name and go through the normal rituals that you would with having a child. For me, keeping the first name was quite important, and there's a reasonable reason for that, and it's quite personal to me individually, and I'm going to not name names or even put my own full names in here, but when I was born I had my first name and my middle name, but my middle name was ultimately what was chosen to be used to identify who I was. So that's what, growing up, that's what I thought my first name was, and that was fine. And then I remember seeing my birth certificate, and I can't remember how old it was, but I remember seeing it, and seeing that my first name was actually what I thought my middle name was. And I think I asked my mum about it, and I'm not sure really what the answer was, if I'm totally honest. But I think it was changed. Kind of the reason why is not important. It's probably more about how it made me feel. And I can't tell you why, but I had an undeniable feeling of lost identity. And they talk to you about this in training, and about how when your child gets older, if you change their name, the importance of identity, who they are. A name is one aspect of identity, but it's a really important one. And I can't tell you why, but I really felt like I felt drawn to my actual first name, which is quite unusual as well. It's whereas my actual middle name is a bit more commonplace, and maybe that was part of maybe the mystique of it, I don't know, but I definitely felt that I wasn't who I was supposed to be, and I think a lot of that also stems back to wanting to re-identify myself. I had a reasonably difficult school time, and growing up as a confused gay child was all quite difficult, and when I was an adult I made a conscious decision to actually change my name. Obviously I didn't need to change it because it legally was what it was, but I officially changed all my banking documents, all my work stuff, and it caused a lot of confusion for people, and I did that when I was 26, and that was after I exited quite a long-term relationship. And I think I was just going through a real phase of, as cliche as it sounds, self-discovery. And this was one of those hanging things that was out there that I'd always wanted to do and felt ashamed or embarrassed to do. And then I just thought, quite frankly, I'm just going to do what I want to do. So I did it. It felt like a really good, opportune time to do it. So that's a little bit of personal history about why I identify with keeping a name, and how that could be confusing for a child when they get older, because it was confusing for me. And I'm not adopted, but an adopted child has many other minefields to kind of navigate their minds around, where this one for me was just one of those things, but it was quite significant. So the short version there, was quite a long-winded way of getting there, was that I felt really strongly about keeping a name. However, you do have to think about child protection, and you have to think about your new family life. Where with their birth family, what level of risk does that birth family pose? All those sorts of things. And obviously, from a safety point of view, you've got to be very vigilant anyway around things like social media and who you tell the name to and who you tell is adopted. With us, it's difficult because we're gay, you know, so that means that most people assume it's adoption rather than surrogacy, but it's a lot more obvious that our child is not from us or was produced in a I'm going to say normal kind of birth way. So we're lucky that I suppose that our son has got a really nice name actually, and from my point of view, they were old enough to know what their name was, and I felt changing it was probably going to be quite confusing for them. And actually, I didn't want to do it anyway. We added a middle name, and that was a middle name that had some significance within our family, and that's, I think, a really nice addition. They obviously changed surname anyway, so you need to change the surname to yours. Any additions in your surname, the birth family don't find out about any of that. That's all for you only. They only ever know what the old names were based on the old birth certificate. So I think it is difficult. Having said that, when we had our foster to adopt, I was going to say son, but little boy that ultimately didn't end in the right way, they had a name that was different. And it's not something I would have picked. And I found it, when I first found out what the name was before we met him, I was like, oh, okay, I feel like this is something that might test my own belief around wanting to keep the name the same. Because it was identifiable, because it was quite unique. And then just because it just didn't, for me, sound like what I wanted. But then when I met him and I thought about how he came into the world, and even though the birth mother had kind of gone, as it were, he will know that's where his name came from. So we'd ultimately come to the conclusion that should that boy have stayed with us, which he didn't, we would have kept the name, and it was his. We became quite used to it with him, and it just became who he was. I think it's really easy to think about changing the name when you've not met them, and it's a little bit more clinical. But once you meet them and you really start to think about, they're going to want to know their story when they're older. They're going to want to think about, well, why did you change this and why did you do that? And, sometimes when they're older, they're going to feel resentful, I think, perhaps if you change it, whilst they're thinking all sorts of other things. Having said that, there are some circumstances where it's required, because the birth family, whether it's the mother, father, or even the extended family, could put the safety of you as a family unit in jeopardy. And I think as a result, sometimes you do have to change it, and that's just a conversation that will have to be had with your child when they're older. And I think if you can reasonably explain it, there's going to be no issue there. So yeah, I think there are definite circumstances where you should do it. I suppose my personal preference, because of personal experience, was not to. And that, by being completely, that's not me saying you shouldn't. It's everyone's personal choice, but a lot of people ask me, so I thought I would give a bit of an explanation around why my answer is my answer, which is that I would prefer not to change it. But again, adding the fact that your family unit safety is the most important thing. So you do have to consider that, and I think that's something that's perfectly reasonable to explain to your child when you're older. If you feel it's necessary and why it's necessary, then I think it's totally fine. The other thing I'm just going to add quickly about, it's not about the child's identity, but it's kind of about your identity. As a lot of people ask me about meeting the birth parents, and I've spoken about that before, but when you meet the birth parents, if you have any level of discomfort, you can ask for your names to be changed for the record so that they never know what your actual names are. So you can do that, and they do take a photo in there. They never get that photo. So just be reassured that a lot of things are put in place to make you feel comfortable, and to make sure that there is no risk associated to your new family and what that's going to be, moving forward. So yeah. Next time I'm going to do a slightly different topic, I think, which is about becoming a parent as a gay man, and how becoming a parent as a gay man has relit some of my, I guess, protection around homophobia, and I feel a lot more exposed as a gay man now that I've got a child, especially when I'm out as a couple with the child. I think it's an interesting topic. I get a lot of gay, lesbian couples talk to me about, how I feel about adopting. I think so that's something I wanted to talk about and share about, how we feel about it and kind of how it's changed us or not changed us, or maybe dispel some of the things that we thought would be a problem that haven't been. So yeah, okay, thanks.